What's going on? It's SFT, and today we're going to be talking about this coming NFL draft's quarterback position. So we're just going to be focusing on the quarterback position, how it looks, and some of the opinions that the media, and not just that, the fans too, have been saying about this current quarterback draft. But before we get into this video, please subscribe to the channel. I'd really appreciate it. Like the damn video, and let's get into it. Let's start off with how this quarterback position currently looks right now. We got the two main guys, Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, obviously coming off pretty good years with their respective teams, fifth-year guys, and what can we say about them? Like, to me, I think they're pretty damn good prospects overall. Starting off with Cam Ward, pocket presence, pretty solid. Getting into Cam Ward, some of his strengths at least, definitely ball positioning, I would say timing, touch. His touch has been really good this year in terms of lofting a pass over a linebacker or over a safety, and I would say he's a gifted passer. He's a naturally just gifted passer. I've been really impressed with him and what he's been able to output this season with this offense. Seeing how poor their defense is and how much they need him to step up. He stepped up for them in a large portion of games, especially if you look at the Cal game, right? Or they were underwhelming against Georgia Tech, but they gave so much rushing yards and so much time to Georgia Tech. We talk about the game against Syracuse. Yes, their offense wasn't lighting the place up. However, their defense couldn't stop nothing. They were going down the field like nothing, man. Their defense was an absolute embarrassment this year. And his ability to run the plays at a high level, I'm talking about a really high level, and the maturity and experience he's shown this year has really highlighted him and shown him to be a different level of quarterback. We talked about him being a big prospect coming out of Washington State in terms of the transfer portal, and he's been a smash hit in the transfer portal for Miami, at least this year. They weren't able to push the playoffs, yes, but he was excellent for them. We look into Shedeur Sanders. This has been a really good year for him too. Not a great finish with BYU, kind of stomping them out, but his ability to distribute the ball, the touch he has, similar to Cam Ward, but I would definitely say his playmaking ability is so good. His ability to extend the play, sometimes it's immature, yes. It's a lack of awareness. It's sometimes video game-ish in terms of him just running the ball backwards. You're like, what is this guy doing? But I think he's been able to give this team so much answers to a negligent running game. This running game has been absolutely terrible, and he has been able to carry a large portion of this offense's yards overall. A majority of it has come from passing, and he's been excellent in the pass game, man. I think some of his issues, though, if we were to get into his pocket presence, maturity in terms of throwing the ball out of bounds, not taking stupid sacks, not being reckless with the football, and he cleaned up a little bit, yes, but I didn't get to see that level of maturity. But at the end of the day, when you're not playing in front of a decent offensive line, I would say Colorado's offensive line is below average, right? When you're not playing in front of a decent one, at least, then you begin to pick up bad habits like forcing a play, forcing to extend the play, and you feel like it's incumbent upon you to be that game changer consistently for your football team. That's some of the negatives that's come out of Shedeur Sanders' game. Being in front of this really poor offensive line has brought a lot of bad habits to his game, and he needs to get that out. But as a natural prospect, there's a lot of things to be really happy about in terms of what he brings to the game. His arm, his accuracy downfield, right? The touch he has. There's so many things that he can really add to a football team. And outside of those two, this is quite an underwhelming quarterback draft, I would say. We have quarterbacks like Drew Aller. Don't even get me started with Drew Aller and that guy, man. The way he's looked the majority of this year, he can beat up on bad football teams. But when you play against good football teams, when you play against good defenses, like against Ohio State, could have scored a single offensive touchdown. When you play against Notre Dame, looking below average, man. Just extremely disappointing. That's a sad thing to see that he's going back to Penn State and they don't move on to get a new quarterback. That's what shows you. Penn State always proves that they're just not the upper echelons. Like how last year Ohio State moved on from Kyle McCord because they realized right away he's not their solution. Penn State should move on from him, but they won't. Furthermore, guys like Quinn Ewers, not good enough. We saw him against Ohio State, just not good enough, man. Missing passes. Yes, receivers are dropping the ball, but overall, you look at the majority of this year, poor. Twice against Georgia, man. The better competition, shrinking. We look at a guy like Carson Beck, similar thing. 3 interceptions. A lot of interceptions this year, and it's not just that. His poor decision making, poor pocket presence, and you can say his receivers too did not perform at a high level this year. But I look back at him and say, you're supposed to be a fifth-year guy who we count on, who's going to be our guy, and you're not who we expected you to be. And then we have some of the quarterbacks that are a little bit higher on the end, Dillon Gabriel and Will Howard, and mature, solid passing range. But in terms of a great prospect, are they a great prospect? No, you're kind of seeing what they're going to be. They're a part of this new, not J.D. Daniels class in terms of guys who are up there in age, but show so much superstar potential No, we're kind of looking at a Bo Nix right now in terms of you're seeing the final form of a lot of these guys. And some of the biggest issues I have with the quarterbacks I just named is they're part of star-studded lineups. It's not like they're a part of a lineup where they have to make up for the weaknesses that their receivers or their offensive line have, or their defense potentially, where they have to put up a lot of points like Shedeur Sanders in certain parts of the season, or mainly a Cam Ward, right? You look at a guy like Quinn Ewers, great defense. Drew Aller, great defense. Carson Beck, yes, I can understand. Like, receivers not playing good enough. Defense is playing very good. Offensive line, I think they were right tackle struggling a large portion of this season. So I can understand it a little bit, but a step back from last year, where last year you looked a lot better, yes, but you're not playing against the same competition. We're going to get into that too. And you can look into quarterbacks like Dillon Gabriel, Will Howard. Excellent talent all around them. You minimize these players' weaknesses and you only highlight their talents, and that becomes a big issue because you don't get to see a full picture of what these guys truly are. You only get to see certain segments of it. You only get to see those easy passes. They're killing a team, and you think to yourself, this guy's a pretty solid quarterback, but there's nothing special about him. The moment that you make the moment that you make these teams one-dimensional, you absolutely destroy them. And that's a common thing in all football, but especially when it comes to these quarterbacks that don't know what it means to be one-dimensional, that don't know what it means to carry an offense. Like, these guys have no idea what it means to carry an offense. Now let's get into the next somewhat topic I want to bring into this video, and it's the revisionism from last year's quarterback draft. And in general, last year, man, I would say last year we had far more constricted conferences and quarterbacks were playing against far easier competition. This year, you're introduced to a far different level of competition, not just in the regular season, also in the playoffs. So we're going to get to see who you truly are, how you look against the better competition, if you're able to step up, for your team, and if you're going to be the difference maker, that X factor that your team needs. And a lot of these quarterbacks I've named, Drew Aller, Quinn Ewers, Carson Beck during certain parts of this season, and Dillon Gabriel, haven't been able to really step up their level, man. They just haven't been able to step up their level when they were expected to. Dillon Gabriel, he's a little bit of an exception in terms of he's been really good a large portion of this season, but we're talking about that last game against Ohio State looking average. This really gets into the quality of competition you're playing. You're playing far more difficult teams, especially if you're in the SEC, especially if you're in the SEC and the Big Ten. Far more difficult competition, week in, week out, and you're going to have to really stack up your team using NIL and using the transfer portal. And this also plays into the lack of development we'll be seeing from these quarterbacks, man. You don't have the time to develop anymore. You don't have the time to stay out of school for 2-3 years and be the starter and not have to sit behind a guy and just slowly develop, get better and better. No, they much rather bring in a guy right away to solve their issues. No different than you're seeing with Will Howard, Dillon Gabriel, and some of these other guys, man. We've seen, for example, the Indiana quarterback, right? They're bringing in guys right away to solve their issues, and these guys are, yes, they're developed, right? But they're not. There's no raw talent really left in them. We need quarterbacks that are going to become polished in the NFL, not in college football, man. We don't want guys peaking in college football, and that's what this new market is demanding, and that's what these new teams are demanding, man, from their quarterbacks. I'm looking at a lot of these quarterbacks in terms of the ones competing in the playoffs, right? They're the exact same person. All of them are the exact same person, the exact same player, and it's a really sad thing to see, man, that these teams aren't taking a risk on better, talented quarterbacks. You have to shapeshift your offense and how you're going to be approaching a defense as a team, but you can push your ceiling so much higher if you were to get that star player. And to bring it back to last year, right? I remember a guy like Bo Nix. Bo Nix only had 2 tough games against Washington twice. Outside of that, who did he play against that was tough? Nobody. He was stacking up his stats against below average teams, right? And the moment they played against Washington, they got worked. He looked good against both times he played against Washington, but was he good enough to be a decent Washington defense? No, he wasn't. He wasn't good enough. And now people are talking about him, and people were talking about him during the draft as being a first-round pick. What's wrong with these guys, too? Like, are these guys no different than Bo Nix, except they had to play against a little tougher competition? Is our new approach, right, going to be the easier competition you play, the better you look, the easier competition you play, and the better you look overall, the higher you're going to go in terms of the draft? Or is it going to be, I want to get the guy who plays against the toughest competition, who's the guy who has to make plays, and we're going to see how he works, how he develops, how he shows, if he's going to show that he's a superstar, if he's going to show that he has that superstar potential, so we can take him as a top 5 pick in the NFL draft. we're entering an era where we're really not going to see that anymore because college teams are not going to be looking at these quarterbacks the same way as they were once looking at these quarterbacks. And we're going to get far less superstar level quarterbacks. We're going to get a lot more polished, potentially ceiling hitting quarterbacks. Furthermore, I want to get into a guy who really inspired this video. It's JJ McCarthy. I saw a Get Up video, right, with Greeny, and he said that if JJ McCarthy was in this draft, he would be the number one quarterback coming out. And it was disgusting. I couldn't believe it. So you're telling me a quarterback, right? A quarterback who was a part of a team that's offense was run through the running game, and he was just an assistant to it. You know, here and there he would have to make a great play, right? But outside of that, his main goal was to not make mistakes. His main goal was to not throw the game away. They did not give him the keys to this offense. They gave his keys to the offensive line and to the offensive coordinator. They never told him, you have to go out there and win us a game. No, they stick to the game plan that was there and what their culture was, period. He was a glorified game manager on Michigan Wolverines. And he was a very good game manager at that. Like, he did what he had to do to help them win a national championship. But one thing I just can't stand, man, is them saying, if he was in this year's draft, he would be the number one overall pick. What are you talking about? Like, what are we talking about, man? There's no way anybody would take... JJ McCarthy last year was supposed to be a second or third round pick, right? The only reason why the Vikings moved up is because they really needed a quarterback after Kirk Cousins left. They needed a backup quarterback, somebody that's young that can learn under a new regiment, and they just took him. Why not? If they could have got their hands on Bo Nix, they would have took Bo Nix. If they could have got their hands on Michael Penix, they would have took Michael Penix. He was the last option. What are we talking about right now, man? We're talking about... It's this really disturbing thing of glorifying quarterbacks, game managers that were on elite football teams to consistently make plays, to consistently come back. Like, what are we... No, this team consistently played with a lead. They were never playing like they were the underdogs, man. Michigan went to most games, and people were confident they were going to win. They looked like a dominant team defensively. They looked absolutely lights out. Offensively, especially at that offensive line, they looked lights out, man. They had depth at running back. They had a really good tight end. They had some decent receivers. They weren't the best, and they had a decent quarterback. But we never looked at the team and said to ourselves, oh, man, this quarterback is a next-level game changer. No, we didn't. What are we doing, man? And this is glorifying, right? Quarterbacks being not just game manager, but playing against below average competition and looking really good. We can't do things like that. The best quarterbacks that came out this year, if you were to look at it, is if you were to look at the best quarterbacks right now, what would we think about? Patrick Mahomes, Texas Tech, garbage team, average team, but he had to consistently make plays. And guess what? He developed and he developed and he developed, and he's peaking in the NFL right now. Lamar Jackson, Louisville, he had some good years at Louisville, especially his Heisman year. Lost to Clemson in I think it was a third or fourth game, right? Big game for him. Kept developing. Had to lead this team. Had to be the guy, man. We're looking at Josh Allen, Wyoming. Had to be the guy, man. Joe Burrow. All the issues he had at Ohio State. Some of the turmoils he had with LSU. Finally hitting that next level. What are we talking about, man? We're talking about the top 4 quarterbacks, the elite quarterbacks in the NFL right now, are guys who had to overcome extreme hardships in college, not freaking be a part of an elite franchise, not be a part of an elite team and just ride the coattails of them, not be a part of an elite team and just be a part in it. No, they were the main part. They were the catalyst of the success of that program, man. That team was making the playoffs with or without JJ McCarthy, man. They had McNamara. They had McNamara as a quarterback the year or 2 years before they won the national championship, and they pushed into the playoffs and had a bad loss to Georgia, yes, but they still pushed to the playoffs and they beat Ohio State that year. What are we talking about, man? It just blows my mind, like this revisionism and the glorification of average, below average quarterback play. We're in an age right now where we don't have a lot of good quarterback play. Outside of the top 4, tell me the elite quarterbacks, man. You saw Jared Goff last night against the Commanders. You saw Jalen Hurts last week. Yes, he's come off some concussions, but what are we talking about right now, man? Justin Herbert looking garbage against the Texans. CJ Stroud looking bad again this week. Getting eliminated to Kansas City. What are we talking about, man? It blows my mind. And that's all I had to say for this video. We need to stop glorifying quarterbacks coming from elite teams and hoping they become something elite. No. I want to see the quarterbacks like a Shedeur Sanders, like a Cam Ward, right? And I want to see these guys go to teams that are potentially not going to be good. I don't know what they're going to be, and be great. You need to excel. Like, I don't want to see quarterbacks being a part. No, I want to see the quarterback being the centerpiece in their college football team. The NFL, whatever they do in the NFL, they do in the NFL, okay? But right now, this part of their career, they need to be the centerpiece, not a part of it, not a piece of it. No, they need to be the centerpiece, period. Thank you so much for watching this video. Subscribe, take care, peace.